Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, April 26th. It's kind of a chilly start to the new work week here in the Mid-Atlantic region. Temperatures down near 40 degrees, maybe the lower 40s in many of the suburbs along the I-95 corridor region. It'll jump up to about 60 to 65 degrees this afternoon in the D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City corridor. Then a big-time warm-up finally gets away in earnest on Tuesday with temperatures well up in the 70s and some spots into the lower 80s and certainly up into the middle 80s in many parts of the I-95 corridor region by the time we reach the middle of the week on Wednesday. It will be a backdoor cool front that could bring some slightly cooler temperatures on Thursday to places like New York City, maybe even Philadelphia. Probably not going to have an impact on the temperatures in D.C. for Thursday. Probably still well up in the 80s down in that part of the I-95 corridor region. But then a more traditional cold front, the kind that moves in from the west to the east, comes through on Friday with some shower activity, and it certainly ushers in some cooler weather by the upcoming weekend. Now we want to start off here by looking at the Madden Julian Oscillation. This is kind of a representation of a tropical disturbance that pretty much moves around the global tropics on a kind of a regular basis, and depending on where it's located, this particular tropical disturbance has an impact on temperature and precipitation patterns in the U.S., for example, and we kind of track it by determining which phase, what we call different phases, the MJO is moving into. And we see this forecast map right here, a kind of a forecast plot by the European model. And the MJO is now in what we call phase 8, as indicated right here, right about this region right here. And it rotates in this fashion, a counterclockwise fashion. It looks like it will rotate right into phase 1 over the next, by the weekend or into the early part of next week, and then ultimately into phase 2 here. This is phase 2. When the Madden Julian Oscillation this time of the year moves into phases 1 and 2, it's generally a colder weather pattern for the central and eastern part of the nation. So the MJO is telling us that even though we have a big time warm-up over the next few days coming into the eastern part of the nation, it looks like its days are numbered, and we do indeed appear to be getting back into cooler weather by the upcoming weekend with the passage of that late week cold frontal system. In fact, let's show some of these composite temperature maps for the different phases of the MJO, the Madden Julian Oscillation, for this time of the year. Notice here in the upper left we have phase 1, and this is for the April, May, June time period, and phase 2. And we just saw a moment ago that the European model and many of the other models as well have the MJO rotating around in that counterclockwise fashion through phase 8 and then into phase 1 and 2. And look at this, generally cooler than normal conditions for phase 1 in the central and eastern U.S., and certainly cooler than normal in phase 2 in much of the central and eastern U.S. So the MJO, and this is not 100% guarantee by any means, but the MJO is suggesting that even though we have a big-time warm-up coming into the eastern states for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, its days are numbered. And indeed, the weather pattern, and we'll see that in a moment here with the computer forecast model, looks like cooler air does return back in Friday, especially by the upcoming weekend into the Mid-Atlantic region and Northeast U.S. Well, let's take a look at the operational version of the GFS from 6Z last night, and we're looking at the 850 millibar temperature anomalies. Again, starting off the week here with chilly conditions, cooler than normal, temperatures down to 40 to 45 degrees in many suburban areas as we start off the day on Monday, and it goes up into the lower 60s, which is a little bit below normal for this time of the year. But here's the beginnings of our big time warm-up. It'll get underway today in the central part of the nation and then push to the north and east, and a big noticeable change by tomorrow afternoon. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and all surrounding suburbs. Certainly well up in the 70s in Philly and New York City, and perhaps the low to mid 80s in D.C. on Tuesday afternoon. It stays Very warm on Wednesday. This is the forecast map for Wednesday morning in terms of 850 millibar temperature anomalies. Could turn out that Wednesday turns out to be the warmest day of the week, way above normal. We'll have to watch for the beginnings of a backdoor cool front that could bring some cooler air from the northeast to the southwest. Certainly by the time we get into Thursday, here's the Thursday morning forecast map. This is, again, at the 850 millibar level, a couple thousand feet off the ground level. Down at the surface, it could be a little bit of a low-level flow from the northeast that could bring a few degrees off these temperatures on Thursday as compared with Wednesday in New York City, definitely Boston, maybe even down into Philly. Generally, still the warmer than normal pattern continues into Thursday, but then here we go by Friday morning. Look at the delineation right here with much above normal to its east, much below normal to the west. This is the cold frontal system that moves into the eastern U.S. On Friday with some showers in the eastern states here, and then no doubt it gets back to cooler than normal by the time we get to the upcoming weekend on Saturday and into Sunday. It looks like a cooler than normal weekend. So even though we have a big time warm-up coming Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it's not going to sustain itself as we transition to the month of May, which actually begins on Saturday, with cooler than normal conditions coming back into the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast, and much of the eastern U.S. for Saturday and Sunday. Well, let's now take a look at the surface maps from the 6Z operational run of the GFS. And here we go. We have Canadian high pressure now parked over the eastern Great Lakes. And look at this flow of air out of the north to the south. Winds blow clockwise around high pressure systems, so they're flowing like this. And we have a stiff north to northwest wind in New England, all the way down in the Mid-Atlantic region today, and that will keep us on a little bit on the cooler than normal side. But as we move forward, that high pressure area shifts off to the south and east in the overnight hours, off the eastern seaboard by tomorrow morning. And again, with this clockwise flow around highs, look at this. This is a broad southwesterly flow of air, really quite strong out across the Midwest, and in fact it ushers in some much milder air right here into the I-95 corridor region by tomorrow afternoon. So confined to the low to mid 60s today, places like DC, Philly, New York City, but then well up in the 70s tomorrow, especially Philly and New York, maybe even into the 80s in DC, and then all areas in the 80s on Wednesday. This is the Wednesday evening forecast map. Again, we'll have to watch for a little bit of a backdoor cool front that could bring a shower or two, and maybe even a little bit of a cool down on Thursday in at least the northern part of the Mid-Atlantic region. But here's that more traditional cold front by the time we get to Thursday afternoon. It's moving from the west to the east, again, a more traditional as compared with the backdoor cool front, which moves from the northeast to the southwest. And here we go by Thursday night into the day on Friday. Showers in the eastern U.S. with that cool front, and that pushes to the east. And here we go again, more northwest flow and some chilly air by the upcoming weekend, even putting in some snowfall shown here in blue way up in the upstate northwestern part of Pennsylvania, western New York State. Northwest winds here on the backside of that frontal system will usher in cooler than normal air by the time we get to the upcoming weekend. So again, a big time warm-up coming to the I-95 corridor region of the Mid-Atlantic for Tuesday, Wednesday, probably Thursday, at least in the southern Mid-Atlantic. But then much cooler conditions arrive by the upcoming weekend with the passage of a late week cold frontal system. That's it for now. For PerspectiveWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.